Hey everybody, guess who? I decided to do a video now that I have a webcam thanks to all my Patreon subscribers. I thought I would start doing some videos, where you can see me. People seem to like that. I do not know why, but whatever. But anyway, today, I got a letter in from a young lady and she wants to get my opinion on something, so I'm going to read you the letter that she sent in. It says, "Good morning, Deb. I'd like to get your perspective on something I'm considering. I'm 37 and single, but I'd like to be a mom. My goal is to have this happen all by December 2018. I've seriously been considering artificial insemination/adoption as I'm not getting any younger. I'm mature, college educated, financially stable, and I have a great extended family. I come from a family of married people. My parents have been married for over 40 years. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles have all been married for decades, so I've witnessed marriage up close. I've dated, but unfortunately my relationships don't work out. I'm careful about the men I get involved with, and initially they seem great, but they later turn out to be selfish, self-centered, and non-committal. How many of us know that drag and drama? So at this point, I haven't met the right man in 37 years, and I feel the chances of me finding and having time to properly vet him so I'm not attached to a fool for the next 18 years is slim. Even if I did, I'm not 100% sold on the idea of marriage. I'm not even 10% sold on the idea. I know being a single parent is difficult, but I'm going in with wide-eyed open. I'd love to hear your thoughts." So what we have here is a young, when she was a youngster, she was having the same dreams of happily ever after with her prince that I think most of us had at that age. But you get older, you go through life, and then you realize, that ain't gonna happen. And you still have dreams for yourself. You still have things that you want to have accomplished in your world. And in her case, it's being a mother. So, her knight in shining armor didn't show up. And now she's considering whether she should adopt, like Sandra Bullock and some other big Hollywood names have done, or if she should have a baby with her own DNA. There's a lot to consider here, and you did the right thing to write to me, so I'm going to walk you through this because there's a lot to think about. You aren't going into this like some little ingenue where you don't know what's happening and you just accidentally got pregnant and now you trying to figure out how to have a baby and take care of it by yourself in a short period of time. You're giving this a lot of thought, and you're even giving yourself a window in which to make this dream come true. So I gotta applaud you. You're doing this the right way. But let's start with how you're gonna make this happen, because there's a couple of options here for how you can make it happen. Number one, you got to consider the fertility issue. Now, I know, statistically, all these doctors say, well, after the age of 35, you're going to have trouble getting pregnant. I like to up that age to 40, and really, I haven't seen any black woman have trouble getting pregnant even up to 45, 46, 47 years old. So, by the later end of that, you may have a little issues, but I just know too many women who having babies at 44, 45, and they got pregnant like that, the baby's healthy, and they never had any problems. So, consider that as an issue, and I think at 37, you have plenty of time. You don't even need to worry about that so much. But make sure you get an open-minded OBGYN when you do get pregnant, and, handle your business medically. The other issue is if you are determined to have some issues with fertility, what are you going to do about it? They have fertility specialists, but that costs money. I'm not sure it's covered by every health insurance plan, so that's something to look into just in case. You want to have the information. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying you want to have all your ducks in a row. You want to have a plan. Adoption, that's something you have to consider. It's kind of a risk as far as you don't know what that child's parents did as far as nutrition while she was pregnant, what the DNA gene pool is that child's being pulled from. Are you going to have a child that was created by some fools with a mental illness history or a pattern of dependency and, weirdness or criminal attitudes? It's kind of a crapshoot. If you do get the kind of adoption where you get to know the woman while she's still pregnant and you can get answers to all those questions. That's one thing, but you just adopt a baby out the blue. That's something else altogether. So it sounds like though that you're probably more leaning towards figuring out how to have this baby by your other means. So there's two ways to do that. Now you can do it the natural way, where you get involved with some guy, you pick a guy and you tell him what you want to do, and he's a full participant. What my warning is to you there is, if you decide to go that route, make sure you see an attorney and get all your T's crossed and all your I's dotted, because you want him to sign off. You want him to give up all parental rights, and you want to have sole legal and physical custody. You got to cover both of those, legal and physical, and sole custody in your hands. Otherwise, if you don't take care of that, he's going to be entitled to, he could even get custody. He'd be entitled to visitation. Of course, you'd have to pay child support, which he's probably not going to want to do. But I think, since this is your idea, this is your baby you want to have, make sure that you handle your business to suit your needs. Because even if you don't, no matter how much the agreement is, you guys, and how much, he's like, I'm not going to do anything, I just leave you alone, blah, 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 blah. He could change his mind. Maybe he could find out later he'll get in an accident or something, and he can't have any more children. That's the only child he has. He's going to come back, want some visitation, and possibly fighting you for custody. Handle your business. If that's how you decide to do things, handle it. So, the other way is, of course, with the artificial insemination. They can do that two ways. Usually, if you have a partner, people do the in vitro fertilization, where the egg is fertilized and then implanted. That's very expensive. Otherwise, you just get your sperm from a sperm bank. You can do the vaginal insemination at home, which has a higher rate of failure, or you can get the intrauterine, whatever that phrase is, way that they do it actually in the doctor's office. That has a much higher percentage of success. And that's relatively inexpensive. What's good about going to a sperm bank is they have, they fill out a medical form, they do blood tests and all that stuff. You get to pick like eye color, hair color, intellect, which is judged by the grades, because a lot of those are college students. What kind of grades do they get in school, what their parents do for a living, what their IQ is, all kinds of things, and even the race of the sperm donor. You get to choose all of that. So you can pretty much kind of like design your child, which is kind of nice, actually. All right. So that's just getting things off the ground. That's that's just the first part. Okay, now you're pregnant. All right. Now you're looking at, okay, in 9 months I'm gonna have this person that I need to be taken care of. What do I do? Okay, these are the list of things. You might want to write this down, because these are things that you need to consider. Number one. Okay, well, wait, it's a list of 10 things. That was number one. Okay, so now we're on number two. The financial issues and financial aspect. You have to be prepared financially. Do you know, every year in January, the government comes up with this report. They do a study to tell you how much it's going to cost for you to raise a child to adulthood, from this fiscal year forward. Okay, from 2017, the number has jumped up to $233,610. That's from birth through 17 or 18 or something, till the day they turn 18. That doesn't even include college. Okay, so now you're looking at, unless you want your kid to be suffering and bundled up under student loans and debt when he or she gets out of college, you got to put money away for that too. So there's another $200,000. So I'm like, you better really think about this, okay? I know you say you're financially stable and stuff, and you might be way more than I am in that respect, but it's a lot of money. And they figure, depending upon which part of the country you live in, because of course, both coasts are way more expensive than, in the middle of the country. The cost per year to raise a child is anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 per year. And if you got a little one where you're paying, a lot of daycare, medical bills and stuff, it could be even higher. So that's something to think about. The other costs that you have to factor in is, clothes and food and shoes and haircuts and medical school and tuition and school uniforms and babysitting fees. You don't want to be tied to the kid 24/7, 365, so you're going to need to hire a babysitter every now and then. You may have some increased expenses as far as housing and utilities, because you may have to get a bigger place. You may decide to buy a home for the child to be raised up in. There's increased insurance, because you definitely want to have a life insurance policy when you have a little one dependent on you. You definitely want to put that in place, and and supplying them with health care and stuff like that. So, and there are co-payments with all of that. And I'm telling you, new babies go to the doctor, it seems like every other day. They want you to show up with this kid. So that's something to consider. You might want to look into that and make a budget and kind of figure out how much all that's going to cost. Okay, then a huge cost for children, especially for newborns, what they call them, infants, is daycare while you work. Okay, you single mother, you're going to have to get you a daycare facility. Now you can use the licensed home daycares are more intimate. They do smaller numbers of children, more one-on-one care for the baby, but they charge you because infants can't do anything. They got to do everything. They're very hands-on, very labor-intensive, so they charge you up the ass for infant care. If you decide to put your baby in a big daycare center, they charge you even more, and they get less personal attention. The other option is that you hire somebody to come into your home and take care of the kid at your house. Now, if you balling like that, that's better actually. Or you might have enough money saved up, or take your FMLA and be off for a year and whatever to take care of your baby yourself. So those are all options to consider which one you might want to do. Number 3 to consider is your social circle. How accepted is this child going to be, and you as well, for making this choice? Is that going to be any problem for you? I'm not saying you're going to change your mind, it's going to influence you. I'm just saying it's something to consider that you may have to address. That's just the way it is. You will be a single parent. I mean, in some people's social circle, that's really frowned on. Everyone is married. Nobody has children out of wedlock or raises them by themselves. So, you may be the first one in your group. Is that something that you are ready to handle? Possible ostracism because of it. Number 5, you got to have backup. That phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, whatever. But if you have a tightly knit family, you're definitely going to need their support. You haven't been a mom before. It's going to be a whole new bag of tricks for you. And you're going to need some support and some encouragement and some backup just in case. What if you get sick? What if you and the baby are sick? Then what? Who's going to help you out? So you got to think about stuff like that. You also have to think about, the isolation. Like if you decide to stay at home, will you be isolated with just you and this baby? What if your family lives far away? You didn't answer any of these questions, so I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there. But if your family was far away from you and you have to actually go to visit them where they are, it's not somebody you can just pick up the phone and they be at your house 10 minutes later. Well, you're going to need some kind of social outlet. They have this mommy and me things. They have meetups for single parents and all sorts of stuff. You might want to investigate something like that, play groups and all this old stuff. You want to get socialization with other adults, and you want the child to have those opportunities as well. Number 6, your social life with a baby. Okay. Now, we can only figure if you've got all these accomplishments and you balling and you mature lady and everything, that you've traveled, you have friends, you have events that you attend, you might be in a sorority and do some sorority stuff. I don't really know. Again, I'm just throwing ideas out there. So, but the bottom line, when you're single, you get used to going and coming as you please. You don't check in with nobody. You don't have nobody to answer to. You do what the fuck you want to do whenever the fuck you want to do it on your own schedule without answering to anybody. Well, suddenly that's all going to change. Are you ready? Because you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to jump up at 11 o'clock at night and decide you want to run out and get you a burger and sit there and do whatever, or go to a midnight movie and all this stuff. These are all things that I do myself. So I'm that's something to think about, something to consider. And you also have to figure that sometimes when parents get, they call it, the postpartum depression, that is something to consider. But sometimes it comes later when you realize it's like it hits you like a ton of bricks, like, oh my God, know, what have I done? This is going to be my life for the next 18 years. Oh my God, it was going to be this. And and you start going into this panic state. Some people turn that inside and become depressed. So you want to consider that as well. These are all ideas. Like I said, there's nothing here is written in stone except the money you're going to be spending. That's pretty much written in stone. But, these are other things. They're just things for you to consider. It looks like you're a very thoughtful person. You're not trying to go into this, being stupid. You going in with both eyes open. That means you got to consider every single aspect that's going to impact you. Number 7, the child's education and enrichment. Now, a lot of people don't plan on this. You're going to need, you got to consider whether the school district in the area you are in, is it a good one? Look at what Trump's doing to the public schools. Are they going to still be there? Are you going to be on this voucher program? You're going to put your child in a private school. Well, if you're going to put them in a private school, then you're going to have a lot of tuition to pay. You got to do books. You got to do supplies. There's all kind of other school fees. It's not just tuition. They nickel and dime you half to death, because I had my daughter in a private school. It's like every time I turned around, I was writing a goddamn check. It was ridiculous. And then you got to have backup, believe people think, oh, well, daycare. But what about when the kid is in school and they have days where the schools are closed, teachers work day and just, district whatever day and just sunny day. I mean, they don't just make up stuff. So in those days, either you have to have somebody who can provide a daycare situation for that child on just these intermittent days, or you have to take off. I mean, if you got a kind of job where you can work at home, that might work for you. But this is, again, something to think about. Usually they give you a school calendar at the beginning of the year, late August or whatever. So you're going to know in advance, so you can plan in advance. But it's still, like if you don't have that kind of backup structure, you're going to have a problem. And you got to think about, tutors and dance lessons and music lessons and, trips that they have for schools and Boy Scouts and sports teams and Girl Scouts and, whatever else, dance classes and art classes. And as they get older, they might want to go overseas and be a student exchange. I mean, all that stuff costs a lot of money. And it's not included in tuition. It's not included in your day-to-day costs. So this is something else that you have to think about. If you really want your child, you want to provide the best opportunities for your child. And as a parent, I think that's our goal. People want to provide their kids with like a bunch of junk, I never had a phone I never had these designer clothes and I never had this. That's not what being a good parent is all about. Kids just need some shoes. They can get the shoes at JCPenney's. You know what I mean? It's going to cover their feet and it's going to look good. They'll be fine. What really is going to make the difference in that child's life is the opportunities that you provide. If you have the money and you can set your child up like that for that kind of success, do it. I mean, you can't go wrong. Okay, now number 8, you need to do an honest assessment of yourself. You sound like, at 37, you're pretty mature. You probably can deal with the stress. But there's a lot of unexpected physical and emotional and mental demands on you as a single parent that you might not really be planning on. I mean, there's a great demand on your time and energy. Sometimes you're so tired, you worked late or whatever, and you still got to go home and deal with that kid. You still got to do laundry. You still got to make sure your homework's done. You still got to feed the kid, bathe the kid, read the kid a story, and then you finally have time to spend on yourself. Well, after a few months of that kind of grind, it starts to really get on you. So you have to have, make sure that you structure in free time for yourself and some relaxation and, that you get a babysitter that you can go out. And then you got to think about too, just because you imagine having this, healthy little bouncy baby, what if your kid comes out with some medical issues or special needs and requires all kind of other, special things, wheelchairs or ramps or, whatever. I'm just throwing stuff out there. These are all things for you to consider. Can you handle that? These are all some severe emotional and psychological stresses on parents that I think a lot of people don't really think about. A lot of parents need some respite care, and there are certain organizations in each county that offer that, city or county. Number 9, think about your child rearing style. And we talked about, this family structure that you're going to have, right? So you got a close-knit family, everybody's married. So chances are you have some ideas about how you're going to raise your child. Do they jibe with these people that you might be dependent upon for babysitting? Or, companionship, your kid plays with their kids, this kind of thing. Are you guys in sync with what you think about child discipline, about values that you're going to be teaching your child? about even something as simple as food. My grandmother, my grandmother got in trouble one time because my mother was really anti-sugar. My mother was an RN, and she was really anti-sugar. But so we didn't get the sugary stuff at our house. I mean, every once in a while, my mother would bake us some cookies or something like that. And man, we thought like the heaven had opened up and stuff. We would be like, oh, it was just so fabulous. We had some sweets. But when we go to my grandmother's house, she'd wait till my parents dropped us off, and she'd say, come on in the kitchen. And she would load us up with sugar. She'd have ice cream and donuts, all kinds of shit. And we would go home so amped up, and my mother would always be mad. But, that was her mother, so what was she going to do? But, I mean, I've seen some people really fall out about that, especially if the mother decides that she's going to be vegetarian or vegan or whatever, and then the family is still insisting that this child eat meat or animal products. See, that can cause some real problems. People stop coming over your house and keep their grandchild or niece or whatever away from you because you tripping and not following the mother's instructions. So, think about that too. I mean, if that's the kind of thing you need to start working on your family about, you better start doing it in advance. And then my final point of consideration is to think about your future as far as your romantic life goes. Yes, you're single now. Yes, you don't have a man right now. But is it going to be like that forever? We don't know that. You got to think about how your dating life is going to be with the kid. Are you going to only date men with children? Are you going to not date at all because you want to make sure your kid is safe and protected from potential predators? Because a lot of people don't think about it. Okay, you giving a man and he got some kids, especially he got some teenage boys, and your daughter's 7 or 8 years old, or even your little boy 7 or 8 years old. The potential for sexual abuse is high. So don't think that just because you trust this man that his kids are trustworthy. Teenage boys they have no conscience. They're like animals as far as that goes. So these are all things to really consider. I mean, the safety of your child could be at stake. Also, you have to consider if you're going to be dating and not just really, as you go through the dating process, you're going to date different guys. You might date one for a year or so. The cumulative effect will be that there will be multiple men in and out of your child's life as your child forms attachments to these people because they're around for, pretty good time. And then you two break up. Well, that's going to be devastating, not only to you, but to the child. They have a series of fractured relationships that they have to deal with. So think about that very carefully. If you get, say you get with a dude and it does work out and you guys move forward and you marry him or whatever, you also have to consider the point of what are you going to do with your child? Are you going to let this man adopt him or her or not? And if you do, because you trust him and you think the relationship's going to last a long time and blah, 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 consider this. If you two decide to get a divorce, he will have the right to have joint custody and visitation, and he could even fight you for custody because he will have signed on to become that child's legal parent and guardian just like you did. So those are all things that I think that you need to consider. Like I said, you could go through this video and make a list and write down your thoughts. And then let me know what you decide. I think that you're on the right track. I think that this would be something that could work out. I had a friend who did this. That was a long time ago. She was much older than me. I was only in high school. And she was already in her late 20s or early 30s or something. And she was a friend of our family's. And she decided, same thing, she decided that she wanted to have a baby. And she had no guy on the horizon. There was a guy that she knew that she thought would make a good, father as far as his genes and his looks and stuff. And so she asked him if he would get her pregnant. Of course, he was like, yeah. So, but she did. She handled her business. So he signed off all his rights and everything. And then she had the cutest little girl and she went on with her life. She was happy. So those are all things I think like I said, to think about and consider as you move forward in your journey onto motherhood. I wish you the best. I hope it all works out for you. Deb Cooper from survivingdating.com signing out.